NCI Eastlake. It is 7:01 p.m. Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Dr. Beal?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Here.
Mrs. Warner?
Here.
Mrs. Zern?
Here.
Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, because we didn't do this in December, we need to do this really quickly right now. I'm interested in a motion for somebody to appoint a President Pro Tem to go through this organizational business before the President and Vice President are elected. Is there a motion?
I make the motion to appoint Margaret Warner for the President Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Is there a second?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. It's been moved and seconded that Margaret Warner, me, is the Pro Tem Pres for the next little bit of time. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes, thank you. Motion is carried. We now go to the election of the office of board president. It's a one-year term. Mine says president first. Is yours?
You?
Yes.
Yes, okay, just checking.
Oh.
Sorry.
Oh.
Thanks for checking on me. I am looking for a motion and a nomination for someone to be president of the board for the year 2019.
Madam President,
Mr. Jones.
I motion to nominate Margaret Warner for the position of President.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Mrs. Perchinsky. It's been moved and seconded that Margaret Warner become the president of this board for the year 2019. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes, thank you. I will do my best. And now we are looking for a nomination of a person to be the vice president of this board for the year 2019.
I would like to make that nomination, Madam President, for Amy Zern for Vice President.
Thank you, Mrs. Perchinsky. It's been moved, and I'm now looking for a second.
Madam President,
Mr. Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we elect Amy Zern as president of the board for, or vice president of the board for the year 2019. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes. Motion is carried. Congratulations, Mrs. Zern. Most of the rest of the items on the organizational meeting, we have to establish the meeting dates for the Board of Education, and they are available on board docs, and they're available probably on the website, I'm guessing, too. Robert's Rules of Order will be used when there's any question of what we need to do. And my computer is not going anywhere.
Yeah, mine just went out.
Item I is establishment of a service fund for the Board of Education, and I believe the it's not even coming up over here. Oh, here, I just got it. Okay, so by law, a sum not to exceed $2 for each child so enrolled in our district, or $20,000 is granted the Board of Education as a service fund to pay for expenses that members of the board might incur from their duties. So that is on the consent calendar as well. Let's see what happens when I push the next. Okay. recommendations by the Board of Education to authorize the treasurer to do his job. Would you like to read what it has? Because I got nothing. Oh, I just got something. Nope.
Mine's down.
Okay.
Okay, I have here you go.
Do-
I'm on J. So to allow the treasurer to request advances on taxes collected in the calendar year 2019, to invest available funds for calendar year 2019, and to pay bills with the adopted appropriations in 2019. So that is on the consent calendar. Oh, thanks. Good. Okay, so we just pull it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks. It's not coming back?
It is probably
Okay. I like yours better.
Okay, well, it's coming. If you're on legal, it's still coming.
Yeah, it's not good. Technology is great. I'm sweating. I thought it'd be cold at this meeting.
You got it?
I
get it.
The superintendent of schools, our legal counsel will be Squires, Patton and Boggs, Hoover, Kaysen, Watcher, Courant, Walter Haverfield, Fisher and Phillips, and the Riley firm. Back, right? Tax budget? No. Board of Education minutes?
Need a minute.
We'll get them to, no?
There we go.
I know it says about getting the minutes with at least 3 days or more in advance of the meeting, so, okay.
We got it.
We got it, we think.
Yeah, we got it now.
Okay. Apologize. Resolution requesting notification. The treasurer will approve the resolution requesting the Board of Education to be notified by the tax commissioner for any application for exemption of taxation for any property located within the district. Tax budget year for the calendar 2020. Should it be on the other side? Yes. Be it resolved that the recommendation of the superintendent and the treasurer that the tax budget for calendar year 2020 be adopted. And resolution for group health, vision, and dental insurance for board members. Just let it be noted that board members will pay their own expense in any group health, vision, or dental care that the district offers employees. And item P, pre-authorization of advance of funds. This allows the treasurer to make adjustments, transfers, and additional modifications to the budget up to $2,500,000 in revenue and appropriation accounts. And the last one, hiring authority. This one requires a vote on our part. We authorize the superintendent to employ personnel on a temporary basis between board meetings. So I'm looking for a motion to approve item Q, hiring authority.
Madam President,
Mrs. Zern.
I make the motion to approve item Q, hiring authority.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Is there a second?
I will second that, Madam President.
Thank you, Mrs. Perchinsky. It's been moved and seconded that we pass item Q, hiring authority. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Zern,
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Warner.
Yes, motion has carried. We'll go to item 2, which is the public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to speak, Mr. Parkinson?
No, Mrs. Warner.
Okay. We'll approve our minutes. Looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the meeting December 10th, 2018. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Dr.
I
Beal?
move that we approve the minutes of December 10th, 2018.
Thank you, Dr. Beal. Is there a second?
Madam President,
Mr. Jones?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the meeting December 10th, 2018. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky,
Yes.
Mrs. Zern,
Yes.
Mrs. Warner.
Yes, motion is carried. Before we go to the treasurer's report, Mr. Thompson, will you introduce our guest?
Yes, Ben is with us again, as
That right?
he's an old friend of ours. He's going to give us a construction update on, I think, all 4 projects, correct? Okay, so without further ado,
On the number one.
Yeah, well,
That number one? Yeah, press
wait a
one.
second, I guess anything else.
So we're back to this. This is made of wood. I figured it out by now.
It's really just jobs.
It's working.
It's coming back.
It's that time of year. Thanks for having me back. Oh, there she is. Congratulations, I think. For another year's worth of service.
Something's going on. Not
Yeah, I
just
turned
us.
it off accidentally and hit the power button instead of button number one.
Of course, of course.
That's taking that more back.
Okay.
There it comes. Starting to play your ass.
Blame it on him.
I know. Good.
Well, while it's warming up, in general, December, believe it or not, was a much kinder month to us in terms of weather than November. If you can remember back in November, out of 21 calendar work days that we had, 16 of them rained. So it was just terrible. I mean, 16 where they actually could get nothing done outside. So it was very, very difficult. So December was actually the exact reverse. So they made a lot of progress in December. We're going to start with East Lake North, which is probably what I'm most familiar with. All the structural steel for the building is there. It's all going up. A has been done, which is a stem wing, which everybody was focused on. The roof for Area D, which is a locker room, which all that was tied into the concrete that had to be poured on the upper deck, and isolation pads for the MEP equipment, so that's in. When I wrote this on Friday, the roofers were about 75% done with the stem wing. They were in Saturday. All the flat work on that entire wing is in. We're completely out of the weather. They'll be working there all the way up till spring, probably, in terms of welding seams and doing flashings and the parapet, the metal, brake metal on the parapet. But we are out of the weather on all the academic areas, so we'll be able to continue all that work that we need to inside without any worry about the rain or snow. Steel stairs are going up in the music room. They actually are going to be poured this week. The PHC area, the locker rooms, the brick veneer on the exterior of the building. If you were to split that building between the two academic wings and everything else is about 95, 90% done. Some more than others, and then we are busy working whenever we can on the academic parts of the building. So the humanities wing is about a quarter done. Haven't started the STEM wing yet. But the masonry contractors have all told me if they can't do anything this winter, they'll be back in the spring and they'll get us done in time for school to open. We would rather them work in the winter and get done because anything that can go wrong next spring is liable to go wrong, so we try to get ahead of the schedule as much as we can. The good news is that the entire exterior of the building, with the exception of one area, is, well, the walls are all studded in, all sheathed in. Either windows are going in or there's temporary enclosures, so we're completely out of the weather. And we're temped in. Temporary heat has been on there for about 2 weeks. So drywall is getting hung. Tapers are going to be starting. I want to say they were supposed to start this afternoon. If not, they'll be in there tomorrow morning starting to tape the drywall in the humanities wing. Interior steel studs throughout that building are going in with the exception of the second floor in Area A. That's the floor that still has to be poured. That's scheduled. The first half is going to be poured Wednesday, the second half on Friday. That represents just about, with the exception of some collaborative stairs, all the interior concrete we have in this project, so which is a huge milestone for us. We've been working really hard trying to get that accomplished. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing rough-ins are nearly done in the humanities. They're already underway in the administration, nearly done in the gym, about half done in the auditorium and stage. That got underway last Thursday. All the big air handling units on the D wing, which is the locker room on the second floor, those were set last week, and they were in last week putting up those steel bar joists that are already on site, spreading that decking out. We have an inspection of that decking scheduled for Wednesday, and then Thursday, the roofers are going to start on that area. That represents the last piece of roofing. And if they get 2.5 days of decent weather, and by decent, it needs to be above 20 degrees, and it needs to be dry. Even a little bit of snow isn't going to hurt us. It can't rain. They'll get that entire flat roof done as well. They're really anxious to get us out of the weather on that last piece. So really now everybody's really focused at North High School on the interior finishes now that we've got building enclosure. Difficult to tell from here, but these are the big air handling units on the second floor, the locker room area, that were set on those raised pads. That is actually on the second floor. Those units are in place, and they did not mess around. As they were placed, they were being put where they belong, and they were being bolted together. So everybody's taking advantage of wherever they can work, whenever they can. This is the art area on the second floor. If you look to the right, you would be looking down over the railing to the student dining and performing arts gathering area. A lot more of the steel studs are up. In fact, you can see the track on the floor. The rest of those walls are up. And the electrical rough-ins probably have done, today's Monday. By the end of the week, they'll be drywalling. They'll be topping out these areas. This is a picture that I took about a week and a half ago. This is from the control booth looking down at the floor in the auditorium. In the background is the stage. Today you can barely see through all the equipment that's on that floor where they're working on the rough-ins, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing rough-ins in the auditorium. And today they poured the concrete on that control booth and the stairs leading to it. This is A wing, second floor, the stem wing. All the rebar, the metal's in place, it's ready for concrete. The roof is completely enclosed. All the windows, they look the way they look because they're all closed in with really strong mesh visqueen. The wood frame holds up to the wind, keeps the heat in. There's actually no heat on this floor. The heaters are all on the first floor to warm up this deck. It's got to get above 30 degrees so that they can pour the day after tomorrow. And we're there. There are guys working in these areas in t-shirts. So all on temporary heat. This is a picture on the second floor in the humanities wing, looking towards the elevator, and where the wood steps are now is where the collaborative stairs are going to be in the stadium seating. Drywall's going up, drywall starting to get taped. If you were to go out there by the end of this week and stood on one side of that second floor and looked either way, you couldn't see in the classrooms because the drywall's already going up. The drywallers hit this job very, very hard. And the reason we asked them to do that is because when they start closing walls, everybody else gets very nervous. And if they've been sitting on their hands, they start wondering, is everything that I need in that wall there? Because in a minute, the drywall's going to be up there, and I'm going to be left out in the cold. So it's a tactic that works very, very well. Same thing, second floor, stem wing, taken from the other side. That drywall at the top is the first drywall. It's called topping out. It's the most difficult drywall because they got to cut it around all the pipes and penetrations. Then the rest of the drywall goes in much quicker. And again, this picture is probably a week old. Probably 90% of that drywall on those walls, at least the corridor side walls are up. Collaborative stairs in the student dining area, all except the top where you can see the plywood and the white foam is poured. That was poured this morning. The top of it. The rest of it going down was poured a week and a half ago. So day after tomorrow, the temporary railing at the top, the barricade will come down. And that is the way we will all get up from the first floor to the second floor, vice versa, so that we can take the temporary wood stairs down in the humanities wing and they can start on that stadium. Masons on the second floor, this picture's about 2 weeks old. They worked, it was raining, and they kept working. They would cover the block in brick with plastic. They'd get out of the rain. As soon as it stopped raining, they'd go back to work because it was so critical that we get these walls up. Because until those walls could go up, the rest of the bar joists and the deck could not go up. So that's done too. It was really gratifying. Everybody really pulled in the same direction. This is from the top of the collaborative stairs, looking down at student dining. Again, the entire area is enclosed. It looks like it's open to the outside, but that's all enclosed. Heat's on. those steel stud walls that form some of the servery, some of the counter area, delineate between the kitchen area and the dining area. Those are going in. Electrical panels. Here's what's interesting about this picture. We had them put up the plywood and drywall just on this about 16-foot wall, 14 to 16-foot wall, just so we could get the tubs up and get the electrical going. And these guys have been really good about that. And not just at North, at all the buildings. That if we need them to do something a little bit out of sequence so that the next 2 or 3 contractors get freed up for work, they've been willing to do it. It's not uncommon, but you don't always see it in projects, so it's been very gratifying. The administration, we're up on the 2nd floor. Behind us is the art area, and we're looking out towards the main entrance of the building facing south. All those steel stud walls are up. Probably 99% of the electrical roughing, everything inside the walls is in place. I would say by next week they'll be topping out, and then it'll be a big push to get these areas drywalled as well. Longfellow Elementary School, well beyond North. Main entrance canopy, which has been a real thorn for everybody, is scheduled to arrive now at the end of this week. As soon as it arrives, probably that day or the next day, it's going to start going up. That'll be a big item for us because it's holding 2 or 3 other things up. The way the building is designed, there is an exterior wall that sits at the top of the structure for that canopy. So once that's in, we'll be able to get rid of the temporary enclosure, get a permanent enclosure. Spiral stairs and the interior railing are being fabricated. They're supposed to be up end of this month or early February. Exterior windows are now all done. There were 6 left. They've been put in, and we're basically working on the exterior, the aluminum frame. Most of those are in. Glass is ordered. Some of that glass is in. As soon as it shows up, they put it in right away. At the K1 wing, A wing, the walls are painted, floors are down, because a little piece of carpet still has to be done. If you were to walk in there right now, it all looks kind of finished. In about a week and a half, it'll all be cleaned out. The final coat of paint will go in. Ceiling tiles are already starting to go in. That area is starting to look exactly like classroom wing. If you were to show up in a few weeks, you could almost move into that space. You can't, but you know, it's starting to look that way very, very quickly. The administration, support, and music areas are all drywall, finished, taped, painted. Ceilings are going in. Flooring is already underway. Drywall in grades 2 to 5 wing is probably 75% done. A lot of that painting is already done. I would think in the next couple of weeks, flooring will begin in those areas as well. We started in Area A, we jumped over to Area D, and it's all kind of converging in that center core where the main entrance is with the spiral staircase and the student dining. Technology is they're way ahead of everybody. Concrete, all the exterior concrete, walks and drives, and sidewalks and curbs on the west, the south, and the east part of the building are in. They wanted to keep going. We told them they couldn't because that's on that, where that canopy is, on that kind of the concave part of the building. And we really want to keep out of there if we can, because when we start tearing that building down, we don't want anybody tearing the building down while there's new concrete in place, just in case anything goes wrong. Equipment, that's what I mean. We don't want equipment pulling over the sidewalk in the process of the demolition. Everybody's really cooperative. They're working well together. The level of quality of the work there is very, very high. And the architects will tell you the same thing as Gas. We're pretty pleased with the product we're getting. Drywall in the 4th grade collaborative, it's done. It looks raw right now. This is all painted already. And that picture is only about a week old. Ceiling grid, the 2nd grade classrooms, all that grids in. Some of the tiles starting to go in. All the above ceiling work, probably 99% done. The last thing above the ceiling is the control contractor that does the final installation of a valve, probably this big, full of electronics, gets installed. They want that. After the grid is in, they say we work through the grid on the HVAC units, the VAV boxes, and it probably takes them an hour per classroom. That's the last piece that has to be done above that ceiling. First, 2nd, and 3rd grade collaborative area, drywall's up, it's painted. They still have to drywall the soffits. All the above ceiling rough-ins, probably 95% done. They're keeping, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors are keeping up with everybody. That has not been an issue on either of these two. Well, and I don't think it's been an issue at the south either. Ceiling and soffit framing, you can see that circle. That forms the kind of space where that spiral staircase comes from the main entrance, goes up to the second floor, up into the media center. All the above ceiling rough-ins, they're done. Student dining. There are clouds made up of drop grid ceiling. All those are laid out. By laid out, they actually clear the floor. They lay them out on the floor, literally. They draw them on the floor. Carpenters do, and then everybody comes and takes their information off of that layout, projects it up onto the deck, and that's where they install things like their diffusers, their lights, so that lights go where they belong. They don't fall in between the clouds if they're supposed to be inside the cloud. So it's kind of a choreographed system that works very well. We're really blessed with the carpentry contractor. Their superintendent is really, really sharp, and we've benefited from the entire project. Domestic hot water system is done with the exception of insulating the pipe and final testing and balancing. Flooring installation, it's pretty much probably 95% done in kindergarten. Well, the kindergarten collaborative is 100% done, but in that entire K1 wing, I think there's a piece of carpeting that still has to go down in one of the classrooms, and obviously the base, we don't put the base down to the very end. When we're done with almost everything else, the painters will come in and they'll put that final coat of paint on. It's all done except the final. So put that final coat of paint on, they'll put the base on, get everything cleaned up, get the punch list, and the painters come back at the very, very end with a paintbrush and just do it whatever touch-up has to be. But otherwise, it looks very, very, very nearly complete. Flooring installation in the second and third floor, some group, small group rooms, they're going in. All the above ceiling. Now, just an interesting picture. This is what the pipe looks like before it's insulated. It's just raw ductile iron pipe, 4-inch. And when it's all done, it all looks clean and white because those jackets go on. Makes for a very neat looking job. This is the entrance to the group restrooms on the first and second floor, or first and second grade wing at the northern end of the building. We're very happy with it. And again, as Longfellow, as in North, personally, professionally, I'm very pleased with the quality of the work and the way everybody is cooperating. South High School. Area 1, which is the classrooms, drywall finishing on the second floor is supposed to be done this week. They're probably already starting to prime some of those areas. Collaborative stadium seating is scheduled to start with some of the additional framing yet this week. In the admin area, that's area 3-4, admin and music. Exterior block on the outside is done. Curtain wall windows are in core area scheduled to go in this month. That'll be a process. The frame goes up first. The glass is actually ordered off their fabrication drawings, so in theory, the frames get there and probably within a few days, if not at the same time, the glass arrives and it can start going in. That's what we did at Longfellow. It should be the same case here. The roof, if you remember last month, this was one of the last areas yet to be done, with the exception of the Y, to get the roof in, and that roof now is in. It's out of the dry. A lot of detail is still to be done, but we can still get whatever we need to inside without worrying about the rainers. MEPs on all those rough-ins on the second floor, they're underway. Steps are installed, they're poured so people can get up and down from the first floor to the second floor. And drywall in this area is supposed to start mid to the end of January. And it's just the process is going to be the same thing. If you were to go to any of these buildings and watch one area being done and the way that work progresses, you could actually just write a schedule for every year because it's rare that anything digresses from it. Student dining, the low roof is in the dry, exterior blocks, that barrier has been approved, it's a vapor barrier that's applied, and then veneer is going to start as weather permits on the exterior as the interior block work is going in. So on all these buildings, when the weather gets cold, when it gets inclement, they always have almost always have some place to go inside the building so that they're not losing. They have a crew of 20 guys, they don't, or 20 bricklayers and laborers, they don't send everybody home. There's places for these folks to go if possible. Loading dock foundations are in, walls are going to be installed. Some of that food service equipment that's got to go in as the rest of the area is being built up and scheduled to arrive. And again, that's just a scheduling exercise, and those folks are pretty good at tri-marking at all three buildings. The gym and the field house, the pre-engineered metal panels on the exterior of the building, they're almost complete. Downspouts are installed, and that sounds like a funny thing to say, your walls are in your downspouts, but what that implies is that they've controlled the rainwater. They don't have to worry about it raining inside the building anymore. It's not being temped in. Those are the final downspouts. Water is going over to the storm sewer, which is where they use it. The track steel for that running track in the field house is going up. Railings, and there'll be a photograph later that the railings are starting to go up, and they're actually starting to prep for that concrete. Gym equipment supports, they gave us all some challenges up front. They're on site, they're being installed, so in a minute, we're going to see the gym equipment starting to show. Things at the back, basically it's the basketball supports, the backboards, that'll all be going in. And once that's in place, all the rest of the MEP that's up in the ceiling, that can continue. Bearing, non-bearing concrete walls are going, or block walls are going in, and pool B, and that's another picture you'll see later on, is ready to be poured. The walls are up, the rebar's in, all the wire mesh is in place, so that's in good shape. The YMCA, the brick veneer is about 80% done, and again, whatever weather permits, they're going to be out there working, trying to get as much of that done as at any of them. The same thing we're doing at North, trying to get as far ahead of the schedule as we can. Exterior panels are going to start now that the brick is done, because the panels die into the brick, so to speak. Where they don't have brick, it's all temped in. Again, the goal is to get everybody out of the weather. At the senior center, window frames are installed. Glass is a couple weeks away. Drywall is underway. It's taped. It's getting hung, it's going to be taped. Our partition tracks that are operable partitions, they go in as the drywall goes in, so those are being installed. MEPs are going in, everybody's keeping up. First floor classroom at the Y, drywall finishing. This picture is about 4 days old. I talked to John this morning. The sanding is done, they're starting to prime these walls. Electrical's done, way ahead of they're keeping up with everybody. The way the electricals go in these projects, they run temporary power, temporary lights for us, and everybody works off of that until all these systems go in, and then selective circuits are set up as the walls are finished so that they can work off of. You can walk into any one of these classrooms. Once you get to this stage, plug a charger or a power tool or a fan or a temporary light into an outlet in that room at the top, and it's safe, it's to code. The administrative office looking into that curb section on in the admin area. The veneer is up. It's tough to tell from here. The veneer is up. The openings are temped in with reinforced plastic and wood framing, allowing everybody to continue to work. On the south side, student dining, the brick veneer is going up. Like everything else, we're kind of stuck right now. They can't do a whole lot outside right now because of the weather, but anytime they get anything close to above high 30s, low 40s, they're going to be out here laying brick wherever they can, brick veneer. MEPs and student dining are well underway. Those will go on. Those will be going on for a while yet. The same thing here as what you saw at Longfellow. Once they get the MEPs done, that entire floor area gets cleared of everything, and drywall or sound attenuating drop grid clouds that form kind of the aesthetic, the ceiling, all get laid on the floor, and everybody takes their layout off of those marks, and they can continue the MEPs. The track steel, that's the elevated track steel that you or I would be running on if we were jogging in the winter. What you can see from this picture is just beyond the lift, they're actually starting to put the stanchions for the exterior railings. The decking is down, they're working on reinforcing, and pretty soon now they're going to be pouring the concrete on that elevated deck. This is the same shot in the field house, just taken from the other direction. Again, the track is going up. They'll be able to clear everything out of there, and they'll keep going. Pool B, this is the leisure pool. The walls are up, the stones, the base is in, the rebar, the reinforcement. This is supposed to be poured next week. One of the last pieces in the main part of the building that are open to the weather, This decking, this picture's a few days old. This decking was supposed to start today. I don't know if it did, but it was supposed to start today. If it does, and by decking I mean a roof decking. If it does, probably take 3.5, 4 days, and they'll be able to turn that over to the roofer, and that'll be the last piece of the main building to get closed in. Senior center drywall is going up. By this time next week, they'll probably have 90% of that drywall in, and at one end of the building, while they're still hanging drywall, at the opposite end, they'll have a drywall finisher in there, prepping the stage to finish, get it primed, painted, put a drop-dead ceiling in there with insulation, that area will be ready to go. YMCA, this is the brick on that tower. I think this picture was probably taken last, I'd say last Wednesday or Thursday. They probably have another couple days and they can get that tops and they can get that brick tower completely veneered. This is one of the last areas that we're going to be waiting to get the roof on. In the meantime, they'll get the exterior of the building skin. That's kind of independent of the cold. I mean, they can't do it if it's windy, they can't do it if it's raining, it's snowing really hard. But the exterior walls here will be enclosed long before the roof gets on. And lastly, they started the topsoil removal. This is, we are looking in the background of the middle school, looking towards Route 84. So this is on the north side of the middle school, stripping that topsoil from the practice fields and getting ready for the next site work phase, safe phase of the project. Board of Ed office, it's pretty much done. I think there's still probably a couple items in the punch list have to be addressed, and they're being chased down. Some of the photograph, and again, I apologize for the quality of the picture. It looks much better here. But the finishes are in, carpet's in, furniture's in, painting is in place. The systems are working in terms of mechanical systems. This is ready to go. And I guess you're meeting there, this meeting is there next month. There you go. That's the Board of Ed office. Kind of finished shots are what the rest of the project should look like as these schools are done. Nice furniture. And if you have any questions, I will do my best to try to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Very well.
You're going to be in on July 15th?
Which building?
All of them.
Longfellow is scheduled to be finished substantial completion March 27th. North High School substantial completion, I want to say July 15th, might be July 21.
Okay.
I got to check.
If it's July 21, I'll do backflips and be happy with that.
I want to see
I'd
that.
like to see that. I might pay to see that. And I apologize, I don't know what substantial completion is for South, but I know it's well before it's cool.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We move to the treasurer's report. Mr. Parkinson?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. The first item for your consideration is the report ending December 31st. Information for the report can be found in Exhibit A. Next item is the amended appropriations for the month of December. That information can be found under item B. Item C is Certificate of Estimated Resources. This is for the County Auditor's Office. That report can be found under C. Blanket certificates and purchase orders. There are, let's see, now my computer's doing the same thing. Anyway.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it?
The information for the blanket certificates and the purchase orders can be found on that particular exhibit. Advance of funds, we are requesting the advance of funds to the funds listed on the agenda to avoid a negative balance. The State Auditor's Office does not allow any fund in any month to be negative, which is why we advance funds. And those funds will be returned back to the general fund. Just to note, item 1P in the agenda, that was the recommendation from the State Auditor's Office to give me basically the authority to advance funds technically ahead of when you actually approve them, up to $2.5 million. So the board agenda will look no different. I will still come to you and say this is what I have done with those advance of funds, but this Item 1P gave me the pre-authorization to go ahead and do that prior to a board meeting. And again, if there was any question about it in advance, I could certainly, reverse it if there was ever that case, or do whatever the board had asked to be done. Return of advances. Those are from prior months in which the general fund loaned money out. Those monies are being returned back to the general fund. Next item G is transfer of funds. This is to the termination benefit fund. And there's another one in there for, if it pull up, there's something else in additional to the termination benefit fund. It's not pulling up fast enough. Oh, I'm sorry, it is just the one. The reason this is bigger is because in January is when, under the various labor agreements, we have to fund the HRAs and the severance payments. Those severance payments are divided out over a number of years, and January is the month in which we make those payments. And so I pre-fund the termination benefit fund prior to January so that I could go ahead and make those payments to the various vendors. Item H, grant application. We have the grants under this particular item for your consideration. Item I are generous gifts and donations made by various individuals and organizations to the school district for either general purposes or restricted purposes. Item J, these are student activity purpose goals and proposed budgets and revisions. These particular student activity accounts have to come before the Board of Education for consideration before we are permitted to make those changes to these various student activity programs. And the last item on my agenda is the surplus of equipment by either auction or scrap. We've listed out the various items that we would like to put out to auction or to scrap for your consideration. And those conclude my reports, Madam President.
Thank you, Mr. Parkinson. We now go to the superintendent's report, and my computer just caught up.
How about that?
Well, there you go.
Yeah, how about that?
Only took an hour.
Madam President, the first item on my agenda to report back is School Recognition Month. January is school board recognition. And I think we sometimes lose sight of really the critical role that school boards play, not just in the functionality of that particular school district, but in society in general. I think it's fair to say public education is probably going through one of the more tumultuous times in public school history. A lot of changes are constantly thrust upon us. So the notion that people would volunteer from the community, put themselves out there and run for election, and then do all of the things that you're subjected to for, what is it, $100 a meeting? Or maybe even less, I'm not sure.
It's 100 and a quarter.
Yeah, 100 and a quarter.
Just to be truthful.
100 and a quarter. It's certainly, just to put it in perspective, you make less in a year than elementary teachers make in a semester doing bus duty. So just to kind of put that in perspective. So I really do appreciate what you do. I believe the community really supports and appreciates what you do from the perspective of having to make a lot of difficult decisions that impact the entire community and impact 8,600 kids and impact future generations. And it's really, when you think about it, it's feels a little heavy sometimes even. So know that it's known and know that it's what you do is respected, and we're grateful for what you've been able to accomplish. Mr. Beal, I have something that I'm sure you will frame and put in Brian, your first certificate as a school board member. How about that? Rena, you get another one. Margaret. Amy, and absolutely nothing for the treasurer. So,
And he has a hard job too.
yes, he does. He definitely does. So again, sincerely thank you for what you do. I think it's fair to say that I represent the employees and thanking you for what you do in the community at large. So, difficult jobs.
You're welcome.
In terms of construction update, we just had that. Ben is gone. Thank you, Ben. He is gone. We did have essentially 2 people come and address the school board last meeting. Ms. Toppings and Christy Zier, I think it's actually pronounced Zier, came before the board, and their concern was, the first Ms. Toppings' concern was the building at Soy and where we're going with that. Her comment was we want to make sure that it's been approved. She's referencing funding going forward because obviously there's not enough space for a high school. We are not in a space issue this year or even next year. In the following year, we would be in a space issue at that point. And so we've known that from the onset. There are a couple different funding mechanisms, and part of our work session that we have coming up in January, part of that session is to discuss what our options could be. But I certainly speak for the administration when I say we're committed to this project. We just have to make sure that there's a financial mechanism that makes the most sense, and that's the one that we implement. But there is no sense of urgency to do it right now, although I'm sure they would like it. We have a couple of the construction projects going on, just a little bit. And then the second, Christy mentioned basically the same thing, saying, if you recall, she talked about the Lego League and the success they're having there, and no one's disputing the success that the students there are having. And she had mentioned that it would be great to have an exhibition hall, and that's part of the intent. The exhibition hall is a whole lot more than an exhibition hall. That's just one purpose of the space. That would be dual purpose for a lot of educational spaces. So that is all that was brought before us up to this point, Madam President. So we're going to be on to resolutions.
Feel free.
Item A for your consideration is a telephone carrier service. Again, thank you, Patrick, did the lion's share of the work on this. He has been sincerely a very busy individual, and before I forget, I'd like to thank him and also thank Lori Klanowski, who on top of her normal duties, and Pam Clare as well. I think Pam was her right-hand person on this project, but I would like to take credit for how beautiful the central office turned out, but I had absolutely nothing to do with the beautiful furnishings and colors, and it looks fantastic. And Lori has gained my confidence in her ability to select. She can come and decorate my house if you want to. She's got a great eye for it, so she worked very hard. Pam worked very hard to make that happen. We have a couple different interior decorators on our staff that do quite well. Gina did the soy, and now Lori did central office, and then Patrick has done a fabulous job.
Lori did here.
Lori did here as well. Yeah, Lori did here. Gina did soy, and Lori did central office. So it's a lot of extra time to do all that. Going through the punch lists, I didn't even worry about punch lists and walkthroughs because between Steve Johnson and Lori, I was like, these two are more picky than me, and I thought I was the pickiest person. So I've been out-dueled. And Al certainly did. Al Avery did a lot of work in moving things. So thank you, Al. Worked a lot of hours moving furniture, and it was organizing the move, and Al was helping organize our moves from our high schools and our other buildings over, which is a pretty significant job. So appreciate that as well, Al. So that telephone carrier is called Fusion. We believe that they'll provide a good service for us. It is a 3-year contract, correct? 3-year contract, and thank you for working on that. And I'm trying to find my paper reports. There it is right there. So that requires a vote.
Okay. You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. What is the board's pleasure?
Madam President,
Mrs. Zurin.
I make the motion to approve item 6A, telephone carrier service.
Thank you, Mrs. Zurin. Is there a second?
I will second that motion, Madam President.
Thank you, Mrs. Perchinsky. It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 6A, telephone carrier service. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Zurin?
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes. Motion is carried. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Madam President. Item B for your consideration is a salary schedule revision. Periodically, people will turn in hours, et cetera, towards their degrees, which moves them up in columns on the salary schedule. And we have 2 adjustments. This is the first adjustment that needs to be made.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. You have heard the superintendent's recommendation. What is the board's pleasure?
Madam President,
Dr. Beal.
I move that we accept item 6B, salary schedule revision.
Thank you, Dr. Beal. Is there a second?
Madam President,
Mr. Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 6B, salary schedule revision. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Zurin?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes, motion is carried. Mr. Thompson?
Thank you, Madam President. Item C for your consideration is another adjustment. It dates back to, I believe, the 2013 school year, and these are funds that the person should have been receiving based on being placed correctly on the salary schedule.
Thank you. We're looking for a motion to approve item 6C, the salary step revision.
Madam President,
Mrs. Perchinsky.
I make the motion to approve item 6C, salary step revision.
Thank you, Mrs. Perchinsky. Is there a second?
Madam President,
Mr. Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve item 6C. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Mrs. Zurin?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes, motion is carried. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Madam President. Item D for your consideration is the 2019-20 high school and middle school course selection guide recommendation. Obviously we're in that time of year where our students are scheduling for next school year already. So a lot of work going on there, and the curriculum department did a good job of getting those prepared. Item E for your consideration is the 2019-20 College Credit Plus CCP Master Agreement with Kent State. We have multiple universities and community colleges that we partner with. This is just one more example, and these are statutorily required as well. Item F for your consideration is an overnight or out-of-district field trip request. And let's see if this is one we want to go on. It looks like it might be. This is
They all are.
They all are. F would be, I want to make sure I get the right one. F is NCI Willoughby, and they are going on a trip March 15th through the 16th to Columbus. That one's not so exciting.
I forgot about
A
that.
little warmer,
Yeah.
not the greatest trip, but I'm going to let you go, Rena, on that trip. I'll just take my chances with the next trip on the agenda. Let's take a look at that one.
There's cheaper flights out of Columbus.
That's good.
This is an overnight for the North High Girls Fast Pitch Softball Team. Yeah, I'll take this one. This one is for games in Myrtle Beach on March 24th through the 29th. This is our spring break, obviously. Item H for your consideration might be better. Let's see what H is. Same. Either one. So great trips to go on. And the boys baseball team, same time frame, same location, going to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So best of luck to them. And then I guess it's something to keep in mind as you're getting through winter, know that March isn't too far away and you got a cool trip to go on. Item I for your consideration is the personnel agenda. And again, all of those folks have appeared on board docs, appear before at the board office before and after, and are based upon satisfactory reports from the various agencies, state agencies, making sure that they are fit to be full-time employees within our district. So I was looking for the verbiage that I normally rattle off, but I don't, somehow I missed it. But, oh, here it is. Yes, it is. Employed and received satisfactory records from the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Identification Investigation, the Ohio Department of Public of Education, the Federal Bureau of Investigation before they become full-time employees. So that is this piece here, and that concludes my reports.
Thank you. Item 7 is meeting notification. The next meeting of this Board of Education will be Monday, February 11th, 2019, 7 p.m. at the Administration Building. And the address is 35353. Woo! Curtis Boulevard.
I don't even have that
Be there.
memorized yet.
Be there. It'll be exciting. Are we going to have tours? If this crowd comes, we'll give you tours.
Anyone who
If we have
shows
lots
up,
more, we'll still give you tours.
yeah,
Right.
we will certainly be prepared to give anyone tours that wish to have a tour on that board meeting night. And we do have our work session as we've established today.
Yeah, the 22nd.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is number 8, consent calendar. I'm looking for a motion to approve all the items with an asterisk on them for the consent calendar.
Madam President,
Mrs. Zern.
I make a motion to approve item 8A, adoption of the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Is there a second?
Madam President,
Mr. Jones.
I second that motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Zern,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Purchinsky,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Mrs. Warner.
Yes, motion is carried. Is there anyone from the press here? Okay, the only other business that that I need to bring before the board is that we would like to appoint Mrs. Zern as legislative liaison, and Mrs. Purchinsky will be the alternate. So there are other committees that we serve on as board members, and we'll have that discussion and let you know what they are in case you're interested. That I know Dr. Beal and Mrs. Purchinsky serve on the facilities committee. I serve on Lori's health advisory committee, and Dr. Beal does, so we'll make sure that you know all of that by the next time. We're also going to have a work session on Tuesday, January 22nd at 7 p.m., and I'm not sure where it's going to be.
It's going to be, or we think we'll be able to go in the new board office? Yes,
Are
we'll
you
be in the new board office.
In the boardroom.
Yeah, we'll be in central office, and
Yeah, we'll
just,
be there.
yeah, so board, if you haven't been on the tour yet, if you come in through the front door, right to the right is where the board meetings will be held. Should we move to a different location for a work session, which we probably will, we'll probably move to the 5th floor. But yeah, and we'll probably go in the same room we were in, that we've been meeting in. And so Bill and I will be there, and Chuck will be there.
The direct people?
Yeah, those will be the people that you'll get to spend a couple of hours with.
Okay, a couple of hours, that's good warning then.
I would say no more than 2.
Okay, great.
Starting this at 10 a.m.?
No, we're going to be out by 9 a.m.
Is there a football game on or something?
No, it's just, I hit my threshold and then
Okay, and now I'm looking for a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Madam President,
Mrs. Purchinsky.
I make that motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Mrs. Purchinsky. Is there a second?
Madam President,
Dr. Beal?
I second that motion.
Thank you, Dr. Beal. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. It is 8:01 p.m. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, call the roll.
Mrs. Zern,
Yes.
Dr. Beal,
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Perchinsky?
Yes.
Mrs. Warner?
Yes, we are adjourned. Thanks for coming. Be safe. Happy New Year.